Before I begin to prepare my burlap, I first have to come up with a plan. So I'm going to use my little planning sheet here to help me determine what kind of animal I'd like to make for my project. I think for mine, I'm going to go with a tiger. So I'm going to start with the big shapes that I see. And when I draw it on here, I want to really make sure that I'm using up my space. I don't want to make it teeny tiny in the middle because that'll be very difficult to stitch later. So when I see this tiger, I notice that the outside of his head right here is a circle shape. So I'm going to get close to my edge here and draw a circle. Now, if you mess up and don't make a good circle and it looks more like an oval, that's not a big deal. You can either choose to keep it, or before you erase everything and quit, use what you see. I see this half of my circle is nice and round, but this one kind of goes straight here. So before I erase anything, I'm actually going to see if I can make it more rounded on this side. Ooh, that looks good. And once I fix that, then I can erase the side that I don't like. Once I've got my outline of his head done, then I can move on to the next step. So for my next step, I notice that there is a smaller circle inside of the larger circle. So right here where his mouth is, I'm going to make a smaller circle. So I'm actually going to start about halfway, and I know it's going to come all the way down and touch down here. I'm going to make a circle there. Again, if you mess up, don't erase right away. See what you can fix before you erase. So that's looking pretty good. And then I notice right here I have this upside down triangle shape almost, but it's a little bit curved. So instead of coming to a point, it curves and then goes back up. Then I see there's a straight line that comes down a little bit. And then I have two curved lines on both sides. Okay, and then I have these two oval shapes for his eyes. And they look like they're right on the side of his nose. So right about here, I'm going to create an oval and another oval. And this one has his eyes looking to the side. I think for mine, I'm gonna make his eyes looking up. And then I see he's got these rounded ears for my tiger. So right up here above his eye, I'm just gonna create this rounded ear that comes here, a rounded ear that comes on this side. And right now he's looking a little bit like a bear to me. So I think what I've still got to add are these stripes. So I'm going to add stripes that come in on the sides like this to make it look more tiger-like. They just kind of look like V's that come down, and they're really tall and skinny V's. All right, so once I have this done, in pencil first, I can go ahead and trace over my lines really carefully in marker. Now I've traced this because it's going to make it much easier to see through my burlap. So I'm going to lay this flat on the table, and then I'm going to put the burlap right on top of it. And you can kind of see my outline underneath. Now it's really important that when I put this down, my paper isn't to the side. I want to make sure that paper's really in the middle. If I don't, I won't be able to stitch some of my edges because we'll have glue there later. So once I see that it's right in the middle, then I have to very carefully trace it with my marker again. So I want to be very careful to use one hand to keep my burlap flat and in place. Then I'm going to use my other hand in order to start tracing. Now this is a tough step. So if you move your hand too much, it might fall out of place. If that happens to you, stop what you're doing and just place it right back where it belongs before you start tracing again. Now that I've traced everything, I can flip over my burlap here, and I'm going to glue around the edges as close to the edges as I can. The reason why we are gluing down the edges is because burlap a lot of times falls apart while we're working on it. These little pieces come off, and we don't want them to keep coming off while we're working, because if they do, then we won't be able to stitch in those areas. So we have to make sure that we're gluing it down so it stays in place. So I'm just going to put a really thin line of glue all the way around the edges, as close to the edges as I can. I don't want to come in too far because if I do, I might not be able to stitch in some of those places. All right, and when we finish with that step, we can go ahead and just put it on the drying rack so that it's ready for stitching next week.